Joining us right now, all the way from Rome, Alistair Newton, Senior Political Analyst at Nomura. Alistair, hi, afternoon. Results for 5 elections, or rather state elections, are almost out here in India. What is your reading of Congress's position in these states now and in the centre as well, considering, the most critical of them all, that is the state of Uttar Pradesh? There has been the Samajwadi Party, which has won, and now it won't even need, Congress's support.
Well, quite right, Aisha, and good afternoon to all of your viewers. This election is not just about UP, but if you look across the 5 states as a whole, Congress is clearly not doing particularly well at all. Maybe they will come out okay, but in the other 4, and perhaps most of all in Uttar Pradesh, this is a very disappointing day for Congress and a very good day for Samajwadi, who had really built on what was a good performance in the 2009 general election, let us remember. Also a bad day for Mayawati in Uttar Pradesh as well. That could be down in significant part to India's well-established incumbency. But let's not underestimate the fact that Samajwadi has put up a very strong campaign indeed. As far as the centre is concerned, this is bound to raise more question marks over Rahul Gandhi as a future prospective leader of Congress Party. But let us keep in mind that the 2007 Uttar Pradesh state election was also billed as acid test of his leadership. And despite Congress's poor performance at that time, he recovered extremely well by the time of the 2009 general election. So we certainly should not write off Rahul Gandhi at this stage by any means.
Right. Alistair, in fact, like you pointed out, Congress has actually bettered its 2007 performance even in UP. But the market was hoping for some sort of a tie-up between SP and the Congress, which could lend more stability to the government at the centre and give an impetus to crucial reforms that have been pending. That is not to be, so that's a bit of a disappointment to your mind?
Well, I agree with you that there will be a bit of disappointment there, but to be quite honest with you, I think it was more hope than expectation on behalf of markets. We may well see markets dip a little bit confronted with the reality, but I have to say that I'm personally very cautious about prospects for any significant structural reforms between now and the general election due in April-May 2014. I think that last year's episode around liberalisation of the retail sector was clearly indicative of the difficulties which any Indian government faces with structural reform. And markets, will be well aware of what happened at the end of last year. So let us hope that at least after the 2014 general election, we do get a government coming to power which can make some progress with the structural reforms which India, frankly, needs to keep itself growing at close to double digit.
So, Alistair, at a point like this then, how are foreign investors watching India's political landscape right now? I mean, what are their expectations from not just the state elections, what happens at the centre, but especially since we have the union budget as well as the RBI meet approaching?
Well, I don't think this will concern foreign investors one way or another insofar as there are really no surprises in this election. I think foreign investors will be looking forward. They'll be looking at the fundamentals. They will certainly continue to follow the RBI's policy moves extremely closely. We, as you know, Aisha, are big fans of the RBI. We think it continues to do a very good job managing monetary policy in India. One other thing, though, which foreign investors may be looking out for, I'm not sure the extent to which Indians are looking out for this as well, but you may have a comment on that. There's a lot of suggestions flying around in the foreign press that Priyanka Gandhi may take a more forward position in the Congress Party and indeed in Indian politics in the weeks and months ahead running up to the general election. Priyanka is widely seen outside India, at least, as being a politically very astute operator who is closely in touch with the senses of poorer Indians in India. So I guess one of the things we will be looking out for is to see whether Priyanka steps up alongside Rahul, perhaps, to take a more forward role, and that could be seen as a positive in terms of a potential boost for the Congress party in the run-up to the general election in 2014.
Alistair, would you also rule out the possibility of early polls, of a midterm poll, so to say, or do you think we'll have the general elections only as per schedule in 2014?
Well, I don't think, given Congress's performance in these recent 5 state elections, that they're going to be in any hurry to call an early election. It does look rather like an early election would be not a good move in terms of the sort of returns they could reasonably expect. Now, of course, Congress, frankly, is likely to struggle relative to its 2009 performance in the next general election in any case. We do need to keep in mind that the surprise was very much on the upside for Congress in 2009, so they do have a lot to lose at this stage. And I suspect that what we are likely to see is budget moves aimed at redistribution, at inclusive development, much as we saw in the run-up to the 2009 election, with Congress looking to encourage large numbers of the poorer Indian electorate, that it remains the party best placed to look after their interests in the future. We may see an early election, but right now I would say that it's not likely.
Alistair, you've talked about as to how you're pretty much not hopeful that there is going to be any key move by way of policy reforms from now to the budget, and it's going to turn out somewhat like of a non-event. Do you think the market has priced in all that we are currently grappling with, the ballooning fiscal deficit, the government not being able to match its disinvestment target, high crude oil prices, which are bad for an economy like ours, and policy paralysis, which continues to be, a problem?
I think you've actually asked 2 questions there in a sense, Asia. The first is the internal dynamic of India, where I would suspect that a lot of what's going on in India at the moment, be it monetary policy, fiscal policy, or indeed just the general state of governance in India, has been priced in. But the externalities are, I think, a significantly bigger problem, and in particular the one you highlighted, which is oil prices. Clearly, we should expect more volatility in oil prices. As you know, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is in Washington at the moment. Despite the efforts of him and Barack Obama to put on a joint face yesterday, the gulf between Israel and US on Iran and Iran's nuclear program was very clear for all to see. And the concern is going to remain very much in the front of markets' minds for the foreseeable future, that Israel may launch a strike against Iran at some point during the course of this year. And that is bound to keep up with pressure on oil, and that is bound, as you suggest, to have a negative impact on India. And that's not going to be good for the Indian stock market. That's the sort of external factor which investors will be following very, very closely indeed.
Alistair, before we let you go, very quickly, given the political scenario, what would be your year-end Sensex target?
What would be my
year-end Sensex target?
I'm going to duck that question, I'm afraid, because as a political analyst, I don't really feel qualified to comment expertly on that. What I would say is that overall we remain very positive about India's growth prospects going forward. We do need to see structural reforms. There's no question about that, but we have little expectation of that before the election. But I guess, overall, with the right structural reforms, we as a House would continue to look for India keeping close to double-digit GDP growth in the future and possibly for most of this current decade. But those structural reforms are essential to India meeting that target.